about the impact on something like public health. When we invest in clean energy and electric vehicles and reduce population, more of our children can breathe clean air and drink clean water.
Welcome, and thank you again for watching. This is Ken's Corner, and I'm a little blue because if I wasn't blue, you would see me as red because I am sunburnt like you wouldn't even guess. So Ken is here, of course, my brother, my friend, Ken Smith.
How you doing, Jay?
I'm doing good.
Good.
Ken is here to do the Ippon Ken One Punch Strike on today's current events and news.
Nice. Hi-ya. I give a salute.
Thank you.
Perfect.
And we start. Yes, we have a lot of stuff to go over today.
We
Lots
do.
of stuff.
So I'm going to just jump right into it. Something that should be on all of our hearts because it deals with our brothers and sisters. Our first story involves Pakistan and some of the trials and travails that Christians are going through. Please talk to me a little bit about what this story you have from Pakistan.
Yeah, the police in Pakistan charged a Christian with blasphemy on Friday after he posted a Bible verse on Facebook. And I'm using this isolated incident to warn of what's coming to the West. You know, I don't know how fast it'll be, but true persecution is coming. And it's not just YouTube bans. We're going to talk about a little bit of that stuff or harsh arguments online. I mean, I'm talking real persecution. You can see the arrests already happening, you know, in Canada for, you know, in the UK and Sweden and other areas in Europe, but it's coming here. But the Bible verse that was posted on Facebook by this guy, it infuriated Muslims and caused dozens of Christian families in a village near Sargoha city to flee their homes. The guy's name is Harun Shahzad. He posted his Facebook page, 1 Corinthians 10:18-21, regarding food sacrificed to idols. And the Muslims were beginning their 4-day festival of Eid al-Adha, which is a feast of the sacrifice, which involves slaughtering the animal and sharing the meat. But a Muslim villager took a screenshot of the post and sent it to social media groups and accused Shahzad of disrespecting the Abrahamic tradition of animal sacrifice. And he likened Muslims to pagans, right? So from the 1 Corinthians post, the Apostle Paul states that pagan sacrifices are offered to demons. So the local Christian leaders began monitoring tensions and were in contact with the district of administration and police authorities. When they heard the mobs from other villages had begun gathering, the police sent a large contingent to protect. There's like 250 or so Christian families, and the police reached the village in time to prevent the attack. But however, the police presence did not deter the mob's reactions. So fearing the situation, a majority of the Christian families fled their homes, leaving everything behind. I sure hope we don't have to do that, you know. And meanwhile, Shahzad went into hiding along with his wife and 6 children. The police registered a case against Shahzad under the pressure of the mob. The police took 2 sister-in-laws of Shahzad into custody in an effort to persuade him to surrender himself. And 6 of his brothers also had gone underground fearing for their lives. The reason I follow this and share this type of stuff is, number one, it's happening all over the world, and the Western church knows nothing about it, or they just block it out of their heads. You know, 95% of the church, as Jacob said, has been, you know, persecuted throughout the history of time, basically. But this is number 2. This is exactly and worse what we'll experience as believers in the future, in the near future. But number 3, trust that the Lord will use these situations to bring more and more people to Himself. But you look at where the persecution is. You look at our church in the Western area; it's declining, and you look at the persecution in Iran, China, Middle East, North Africa. The underground church is huge and it's growing. So that's, you know, a good thing. The persecution is actually a good thing. It's cleansing, but it's tough, man. So just wanted to give an update on what's going on. But this is a small microcosm of, you know, just one story of 100,000, 200,000, 1 million stories around the world.
And actually, Ken, I just wanted to mention, I think we've mentioned it before. This is coming to Europe. And 20 years from now, Europe is going to be dealing with this problem because you cannot help when you have majority populations that are Muslim, Sharia law, and other laws like that be enacted on top of your regular national laws. This is the consequence of unrestricted immigration, unfortunately. And on top of that, an advocacy that their culture is superior to Western culture. Yes. And unfortunately, this is where not only where Europe is heading, but the United States continues in their unrestricted campaign of immigration.
Yeah, we talked about this last week.
Europeans are going to come here, and the Europeans aren't going to be French. They're not going to be British. They're not going to be German. They're going to be Nigerian. They're going to be Algerian. They're going to be from everywhere that's immigrating to Europe right now. Yep.
And that's we can see the whole switch, and it goes into it's just part of last day stuff. It's just the whole switch, like I don't know if I'm on board with totally the Joel Richardson version of a Muslim Antichrist. I just don't, I'm just waiting and seeing, so but we can see that Islam is huge, and a lot of what he says makes sense, but it's just as it gets nearer and nearer to the end. Daniel said, "Seal up the book till the end." And so we will be. I think if you're paying attention, you'll realize what's going on and stuff. But it's a tough one, and and then we can go into my persecution from YouTube.
Man, that's great. That's a great segue. So, as some of you are aware, I posted Ken's Corner on both Moriel and the Skeptical Partisan about the same time last week, and luckily, they gave a community guideline strike to my channel, the Skeptical Partisan. Before they gave it to Moriel. Because I would hate to see anything happen to Moriel from anything that we recorded.
But what's funny is if everything that I said, and I mean everything that I said, was off of YouTube. I received it off YouTube. It's amazing, but the targeting of a Christian site, I can't see any other. It's a littler site, obviously, but there's still like 38,000 subscribers.
38.
So it's not super little. But I was talking to Marco about all of this, and he said that other sites had hired huge legal staff and several attorneys, so they're allowed is what he said, certain things. So, but I guess YouTube has several battles in court right now. So a lot of the big like Crowder and some of the other big like London Real, some of the other big sites that London Real has a story. Brian Rose has a story of how they took him down. He was surprised he hasn't, 9 years he hadn't been taken down. But I'm just observing all this right now. But I can predict with 100% accuracy that it gets worse. That persecution is coming. It's just the beginning. So, but it's just, they're just making that observation. I just wanted to make that observation because it happened to us. It's like, wow.
By the way, for the community guideline strike, they asked if I wanted to appeal the decision, and I did on behalf of you and I. And I wrote specifically to them that everything we covered in that story, in that segment that you are marking as medical misinformation for, let's call it a jab, that it appears on other YouTube channels and other episodes of YouTube.
Several.
And it didn't matter.
Didn't matter.
It was automatically, it must have been the AI reviewing the process, because they got that very quick and said, your appeal is denied.
Wow. But that's just an observation. That's just observation of a ministry channel. I don't know where, if it's because it's a littler channel, but it's not a little channel. It's not a tiny channel. Yours is a little channel.
Mine is tiny.
Yeah, Moriel's pretty good size. Moriel's is almost 40,000.
I think that's why Moriel didn't get a strike, and they gave my a strike because I only have 96 subscribers.
Interesting. Very interesting.
They went after me knowing that my first reaction was pull it off of Moriel.
Yeah.
And put a censored version.
That was probably smart. And then, that's why I said, if you noticed, if you've noticed, the last segment of Kid's Corner was not only late, but it was posted censored.
On top of that, I just wanted to say, if you wanted to catch my channel, it might not be up too much longer because I have 2 strikes, and the third strike, that means that my content will be erased from YouTube.
7 years.
I will not re-upload 7 years of videos.
No. Oh man. That sucks. That's not
what
good.
What can you do?
Hey, what can you do? Hey, just look forward to the new heaven, new earth, right?
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Speaking of the earth, just as in the days of Lot,
yes,
we have some new news about the Seattle School Board of public schools. They've had some pretty interesting decisions, Ken, as you've told me. Why don't you talk about that a bit?
It's my LGBTQ update, and just paying attention to this. But Seattle Public Schools offer free sex change services to students as young as 13 without telling parents. And it's the largest public school district in Washington State, referring students in the district to free gender-affirming, quote-unquote, gender-affirming care. So the Nova Wellness Center and the Meany Health Center are offering hormone-blocking medications and referrals for sex change surgeries, which are available to middle and high school students in Seattle Public Schools. But according to the documents obtained by the Parents Defending Education, the healthcare centers are operated by Country Doctor Community Health Centers, which offers no-cost comprehensive trauma-informed and gender-affirming care conveniently at the school. So last year it was revealed that districts saw 853% increase in students that identify as non-binary in the last 3 years, 853% increase. So Heather McDonald had a really good article, and it's called A Battle for Cultural Survival. And it was on cityjournal.org. I got it from John Haller. But the last paragraph was really something that finished off the article good. The last paragraph: ultimately, the trans revolution is part of the West's will to suicide, seen in everything from its immigration policies to its fierce denunciation of its civilization legacy. What exactly are we celebrating with gay pride marches and month-long holidays, if not the rejection of traditional two-parent married families in favor of non-procreative, sometimes grotesquely promiscuous sex? And it continues on. Equality for homosexuals has long been achieved. Now the trans revolution is trying to render as many young people as possible infertile, or at least adverse to traditional marriage and procreation. The rejection of the trans default is a battle for cultural survival. I thought that was a great finish. But I was listening to John Haller, and he had a great if you want to watch him this week, he does an hour and 26 minutes. It was a great breakdown of that. But
I will have to catch that. I did not listen
yet. Listen to it. I listened to it at 175 speed, so I can download. My mind works like that. That's why I have a hard time talking sometimes. It's because my mind's working so fast, and I stumble on words and stuff because my mind works so fast. But anyway, I listen at 175, so it took me an hour. So
you cut it down by 20%.
I did. Yeah, exactly.
Nice,
exactly.
Nice. So you LGBT
same.
We're going to definitely be promoting that for as far as the society for the foreseeable future. It's going on all over the world. It's a big push in Japan. Mark and I have been talking about that.
Yes.
And again, you will never convince me that it has anything to do with persecution, because Japanese society as a whole is very tolerant of homosexuality, and it's just not accepting of it. Now, see the difference? They're very tolerant. They're not going to do anything against you, but they still think it's strange.
Yeah.
But now they want to make it celebrated like they do in the West. And again, this is just a ploy to further decrease the nuclear family. They don't want people to procreate.
Yeah, aren't more young people not getting married too in Japan?
Yes, already the birth rate is upside down in Japan.
We talked about that. We talked about that in a previous show. Yeah. And well, it's coming here too, because you can see the younger generation. I'm going to segue myself into the 40% of Brown University students say that they are LGBT, suggesting that's a social contagion. So it's just as the day's a lot. 40% of Brown University students. The latest data shows that between 2010 and 2023, identification of the LGBTQ has almost tripled among students at Brown University. 14% in 2010, and now it's almost 40. It's 38% now saying they're not heterosexual. So the Brown Daily Herald says the spring 2023 poll found that 30% do not identify as straight, over 5 times the national rate. So that's one college that they did a test. But here's a quote also. Since the fall of 2010, Brown's LGBTQ population has expanded considerably. The gay and lesbian population has increased 26%. The percentage of students identifying as bisexual has increased to 232%. And the students identifying as other sexual orientations within LGBTQ community have increased by 793%, almost 800%. So coming out as not homosexual is trendy and wins social credits.
Yeah, and now we know why there's brown on the pride flag.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. But I continue on with the Christian involvement.
Yeah. The acceptance of it
and the
promotion of it.
Yes, and I know you were surprised at this. I got this from John Haller's site as well. He was talking about it, but it was I was made aware of it by, it's the Unconditional Conference. It's coming up, and from the website, this is what they say is this 2-day premier event is for parents of LGBTQ children and for ministry leaders looking to discover ways to support parents of LGBTQ children in their churches. You will be equipped, refreshed, inspired as you hear from leading communicators on topics that speak to your heart, soul, and mind. We deeply desire this time will bring about healing and restoration. No matter what theology stance you hold, we invite you to listen, reflect, and learn as we approach this topic from a quieter middle stance. So this basically says if your child is transitioning and you're part of the church, we're going to help you in the process, right? So, and that's demonic. I mean, we should love our children, but we should obviously want them to go. I mean, we can't have them just go wild and go crazy. It just that you don't want them drinking, staying out. It's part of your parenting.
It's the only thing that saved me from continuing drugs and alcohol were the hard stance of my loved ones and my family.
Wow.
That said, yeah, you can only show love when you're high and when you're drunk. So go ahead and go do it. That tough language, I used it to really show me a mirror of where I was at.
Man, but yeah, it's just what's funny is on the website you will see, like John Haller talked about how Andy Stanley is he's one of the main speakers here, and he's still around, and I got a quote from him from 2012. This goes back a long time. Where's the conference going to be held? It's at North Point Church in Alpharetta, Georgia, and it's Andy Stanley's church. Almost everyone of the people invited up to his conference to speak is either gay or LGBTQ transitioning or transgender affirming. But and I was watching the update, and I'm right there with him, man. I'm right there with John. Andy Stanley is teaching false error on an epic scale, and he needs to respond. He needs to repent of it. Man, more people need to call him out, and they're not calling him out. But if you remember. Do you have that picture that I sent you that when Gracie met Truthy, Andy Stanley?
I will add it later to the
cool, perfect.
To the video.
Perfect. And you remember that he did this message back in 2012, It was called When Gracie Met Truthy, and it was about a husband and wife who had divorced. The ex-wife was going to church with their child, and their husband began attending. It was North Point Church with his new squeeze, a guy, and they started serving, right? So, and she was mad that they were serving at the church. So Andy Stanley looks at the situation and says, okay, you're divorced from your husband, from your wife, the one guy, and the other guy was not divorced from his wife. So you need to get divorced from your wife too before you can start serving again. Had nothing to do with any homosexuality. It was like, you got to be divorced. Otherwise, go listen. And you can go listen to the sermon. They never took it down. It's on YouTube. It's still up. But, and lastly, this also relates, this is kind of where the society is going. We can see that it started back, this is 2013 I'm going to, so we can kind of see where it just kind of, the last 10 years have been crazy. But if you remember the 2013 inaugural private ceremony, no cameras or anything, with pastors coming from, for prayer service. It's at a church by the White House. I forgot the church's name. But they originally invited Lou Giglio to come and handle that service, right? It was for Obama. And well, people on the left started Googling Lou Giglio and found out that he had done a sermon 7 years before where he said homosexuality was a sin and should be condemned. So Lou Giglio, guess what? He's yanked. And guess who they invited instead? You got it. Andy Stanley.
Andy Stanley?
That's it. Yeah. And remember, Rick Warren also prayed at that. It was Obama's inauguration. Remember, he said that Isa and the prayer. And so you think if Randy Stanley and Rick Warren ever had a sermon where they have a biblical perspective on homosexuality, that their invitation would have stood? Of course not. They never talked about it, and I think I told you Rick Warren was just at a conference with Bill Johnson. So, I mean, it's the apostasy is growing, it's spreading. And how many people do you hear speak out against this? It's just going to get worse. And I'm just raising people's awareness of it. So
Andy Stanley really showed his hand, if you remember. This is all, he telegraphed this for us, Ken. He really showed us his hand when Andy Stanley said, we need to unhitch the Old Testament from the New Testament.
Yes.
That was that moment that it should have been an alarm bells going off in every Christian's mind about this particular leader.
You cannot, the book of Revelation has 800 Old Testament references. You can't separate the two. You can't separate scripture. You can't do that. And I listened to a lot of his interviews. I've studied the guy before. I've listened to a lot of his interviews, and he really does believe that there's a separation. There's some type of, he can word it like he believes it, but you listen to the deep word and deep thought and deep patterns of what he's thinking, and it's like it's not right. It's not on target. It's not. Yeah. It's just deception.
With the moral foundations of the United States being destroyed, and now also the future with the family being destroyed, let's talk about one of the most important things, I think, is the nautical nonsense of the U.S. Navy being undermined during this time of great crisis.
Yes.
Talk to me a little bit about what you found out about our submarines.
Yeah, I couldn't believe it. Nearly 40% of the U.S. attack submarines are out of commission for repairs. I couldn't believe it. The shipyards are facing worker shortages and supply chain issues, they say. But of the 49 fast attack submarines, a total of 18 are either in depot maintenance or waiting maintenance, otherwise known as they're idle, right? So our submarine force is critical to our global security and stability. It's critical. It's what we have as first attack. That's but I have a quote: the growing number of subs in maintenance stems from the shortage of workers able to carry out the necessary work and a lack of space at the maintenance shipyards. In addition, special chain issues have affected the availability of repair parts, especially since many submarine components are from sole source supplies. So the statement confirms that just there's shortages and supply chain issues. But I got three advantages that I was thinking, the three advantages of a submarine. It can remain undetected until the target's destroyed. And it can operate with less than 100 crew. Which the super carriers have like 6,500, the big carriers. So it can fire 10 torpedoes at the same time. controlling my wire, but submarines are a weapons platform that carries the most punch for its size. And the existence of the fleet of ballistic submarines carries 54% of our nation's nuclear arsenal. So it's just crazy.
I believe it was someone in Greece, I can't remember exactly who said that the Navy was the wooden wall around Athens.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, it seems our walls have holes in it. It's also an interesting little thing that I just want to tie in real quick. 40% of university students at Brown consider themselves LGBTQ now, and 40% of our attack submarines are currently down. Almost as if there's a Twilight Zone going on.
Those were the headlines. Those are the headlines, man. I didn't even relate the two. Wow, interesting. Wow. That's a bombshell.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Talk about a bombshell.
I knew you'd catch on there.
But let's talk a little bit about the Biden crime family and the sweetheart deal they gave to China.
It's nuts, and I hope this doesn't mess us up at all or anything. But I'm just going to say, it's from Wayne Allen Root, who's got a really popular show, and he's a super smart guy. But he called it the crime of the century. And he said, did Joe Biden and his cronies steal $1 billion from U.S. taxpayers
Real quick, Ken, just in case YouTube is listening, these are tests for medical procedure that caused a lot of issues in 2019 and 20. Let's not use the word, but let's call it test kits for something that happened in 2019, 2020 that was very serious for everybody.
Yes, the Chinese test kits. There were Chinese.
I love it. I like it.
Chinese test kits. But there's here. I wanted to go through this. There are 5 obvious things almost everyone who isn't blind, deaf, or really dumb, knows by this point. And it is, if you're not listening to CNN, MSNBC, and even Fox, if you're listening to again, the people that got the London Real or Crowder, they're talking about, but Joe Biden is the most crooked, corrupt, and compromised politician in the history of the presidency. That's number 1, for sure. Number 2, the Biden crime family operated as an organized crime organization. Number 3, Biden and his crime family extorted tens of millions of dollars from companies like Burisma and countries like China and Ukraine when Biden was vice president of the United States. So number 4, Biden made decisions as president that directly benefited the countries or companies he was bribed and compromised by. Number 5, Biden and the Biden crime family are owned lock, stock, and barrel by our number 1 enemy, China, and the CCP. So those are the 5 things that I just want to get out there. But what's known is that members of Congress are now reporting that Biden-related firms and partnerships received around $40 million, I think it was, dollars in payments, bribes, while he was vice president. Right. So that was while he was vice president. That's coming out. But knowing that, does anyone doubt that Biden continued, extorting or stealing and accepting millions in bribes? I mean, you just don't come in and then say, OK, I'm going to be better now. So but here's a lesson in crime that I wanted to bring up to the people. The easiest way for a politician or government bureaucrat to steal is by overpaying for government contracts with taxpayer money. That's the easiest way. So you overpay by millions, and then you either keep the overpayment or you split it with the company you bought it from. Everyone gets rich, right? We have witnessed it all before. It goes on every day in our corrupt government. And I believe virtually every government agency, official is stealing. I believe they all are. And it's taxpayer money by the millions. You overpay the government contracts. My wife worked for a company that was connected to the DOJ, and I saw some of the contracts that came through, and they were so huge. I mean, I'm talking like 100 million, 200 million, 500 million. I mean, they're huge contracts, multiple. Anyway, Wayne Allen Root believes that Biden and his cronies stole a minimum of 900 million, maybe as much as 1.1 billion from taxpayers with one deal. One deal. This is the only deal. This is not counting any other thing. Very simple story. So a fan of Wayne Allen Root's radio TV show contacted him, and he's in the business of importing medical supplies. And more specifically, he imported the test kits from the Chinese company. So these certain test kits that test you for the certain disease that was going around for the last 3 years. So he paid $1 per test kit, all right, for 100,000 kits he was ordering at a time. Common sense tells you if you buy more kits, say 200,000, this cost should go down, right? So if you buy 1 million, perhaps the cost goes down 50 cents. I don't know. But imagine now, what if a government buys 400 million test kits? Could the price go down 30 cents, 20 cents? But last year, the Biden administration bought over 300 million of these test kits from a Chinese company that came back and then came back and bought 100 million more. So they bought 400 million total of these test kits. All right. Now, here's where the story gets interesting. Biden bought the exact same test kits from the exact same Chinese company as Wayne Allen Root's fan, who's in the medical supply business. Yeah. All right. So this is apples to apples. This is the comparisons apple to apple. So,
and he paid $1 per
yeah,
kit.
Yeah. Yes, paid $1. So even if you assume he paid $1, I mean, I'm just talking about, maybe he paid 20 cents, or 30 cents, whatever, 50 cents. What Root's guy paid for 100,000, you would only be at $400 million, right? If you paid $1. Well, the entire contract and price was disclosed by media last year. Guess what the Biden administration paid for 400 million kits? $1.3 billion. Yeah. So that's at least an overpayment of $900 million of taxpayer money. Again, that's assuming the kits were $1, and that at 400 million kits, that's highway robbery, man. So 50 cents per kit would be $200 million. So if it was $200 million, that would make the overpayment around $1.1 billion. That's why at 400 million, it'd be $900 million, and at 200 million, it would be $1.1 billion. Again, these contract and prices were all publicly disclosed in the media last year. So this is just one example of how, government really is and has become. There's nothing new under the sun. It's just corrupt. And maybe Biden has stolen tens of billions, who knows, of dollars in his time in office. Who knows? He's been in office 30 years. But I don't know, maybe he's so dumb, he's incompetent and overpaid $1 billion for your tax money to China. I don't know. But Wayne Allen Root says, he finishes the article by saying, "My gut instinct says this was the crime of the century. Somewhere offshore, the Chinese Communist Party divided $1 billion with the Biden crime family. And my educated guess is this is only the tip of the iceberg." So, it's just, that's crazy. Yeah, but you just add this up, and then we can just see and look at the trillions of dollars spent on the disease that went around 3 years. Look at the 5 trillion we're up to, 6 trillion, 6 trillion.
Yeah, and then on top of that, the post office will send you free probably China kits if you fill out a card. They have them being given away at senior centers at various places all over in California if you want free kits.
And I don't want to even get into the part where I know a guy that took 5 different tests. They had him take 5 different kit tests, and they all came up negative, and he had the disease. He had it. He totally had it. He for sure had it. He had every single everything showed up the same as everybody else, and he tested negative 5 times. And the doctor was like, "I know you got it." The doctor kept testing him, but he kept showing up negative. So some of those tests, they have a false positive, right? They have a false positive, a false negative. So, yeah. But that was this is just little microcosms. I'm just pointing out to the people, just little microcosms of things happening, Well,
the government likes to rewrite history. It likes to rewrite, everything as far as reality, especially when it comes to finances.
Yes.
Kind of takes us to our next subject,
Yes, I love it. Good segue. Awesome.
PETA rewrites the book of Genesis in the Bible.
Yep, they
Talk
started
to me a little bit about that.
Oh man, yeah, they're using artificial intelligence, Cbdc, to rewrite the Bible. But yeah, it aims to eliminate animal cruelty and promote veganism to younger generations. And they started with the Book of Genesis, but in the beginning, all animals were treated with respect, adding a cruelty-free story to creation, right? But they're trying to appeal to Gen Z and lower gens, which they've found that 73% have identified as for animal rights. So they're but the terms beast and creature are replaced with beings, beings, beings. And the clothing that God provided for Adam and Eve is made of hemp and bamboo instead of animal skin. So nothing like missing the whole point of sacrifice or atonement, right? But there's a quote from PETA: "No one with any fashion or moral sense would wear animal skins in the 21st century." So, but PETA's revision of Genesis include Abraham and Sarah adopting Herbie, a dog from the shelter. I just thought that was a funny name.
I had no idea that the Canaanites had dog shelters.
As they walked with Herbie, Sarah and Abraham thought of the importance of adopting dogs from shelters and rescue organizations. And my wife works for a rescue. I'm like all about animal rights. I'm all about, not abusing animals. I'm not about, but we gotta have the balance of where that goes with God's mindset. And
I absolutely would love to hear how the AI handled the part where God and Abraham sealed the covenant by cutting the animals in half and walking through the middle.
Yes.
There must have been a carrot on one side, some broccoli, an onion.
Yes. Yep. It had to be vegetables. Had to be cut the vegetables up. Yeah. But the Bible has long been used to justify all forms of oppression. So we've used ChatGPT to make it clear that a loving God would never endorse exploitation or cruelty to animals, is what they said. So yeah, that's that was just interesting to me.
You know what's interesting to me is, okay, so they don't want you to wear the skin of any animal. Okay, well, does that mean that they don't want to shear sheep anymore?
I don't know where that goes. I don't know how. I mean, you look at,
because that's cruel. Sense. That's cruel.
Yes,
there are breeds of sheep that if you will die unless you shear them.
Unless they, totally. Yeah, their fur gets crazy.
Yeah.
There's dogs that are like that. You've seen the dogs that they bring in that just, the little dog that hasn't been shaved or hasn't been trimmed in years, the little Frenchie or whatever, little Pikachu, what's that little dog called? Oh man.
Well, I know.
I'm trying to think of a little dog. There was a little dog that I saw. I see these on my wife's, computer all the time, and they take them in and they take off, 4 or 5 pounds of fur. It's nuts that they're rolling around like that for a couple of years, 3, 4, 5, 8 years,
Yeah.
So yeah. But anyway, that's just and then we were talking about Yuval Harari in the pre-show, how he said that we'll be able to rewrite the Bible and rewrite, all this, and
he must have friends at PETA.
Yeah. Oh man. So yeah.
Crazy man. Talking about other things that are crazy in the world. In fact, this next one hits close to home for me is worship leaders and their willingness to continue to accept music from heretical Christianity like Bethel and Hillsong. Yeah.
Yep. Despite the controversy and scandals, but I read the headline is few worship leaders avoid Bethel and Hillsong's. And a new study released on July 11th found that few worship leaders avoid songs from Hillsong and Bethel. But the study found that most worship leaders connect with songs because they're experienced firsthand at a conference or listening to them online or because a friend at church recommended them. But and the most worship leaders think they have good reasons for picking the songs that they use for worship, but they may not be aware of how the social forces, like the popularity of certain churches, affect their choices. But the study is based on a survey of more than 400 church worship leaders in the U.S. and Canada. And I thought this was interesting. Only 16% said they were less likely to choose a song with ties to Hillsong, and 27% said they were less likely to choose a song with ties to Bethel. So researchers also found that recommendations from friends on social media, congregation members, and church leaders made it more likely that worship leaders would choose a song. So the most influential factors in discovering a new worship song are peer endorsements and personal experiences. Worship leaders mainly trust their friends and fellow church leaders to provide them with song recommendations. So I know you had a story that was that kind of, I hadn't heard that story before.
So I've been a worship member, on the worship team for many churches. And one before I went to Blessed Hope, I had a long conversation with the actual worship director. And what people need to understand is what CCM does is CCM goes to every church and says, or basically you need to get a license to play all the CCM songs, that covers secular Christian songs from A to Z. And let's say that you 1 week, your worship team sings a song from Hillsong. Well, what CCM does is when that is detected, they pay money to that church. So Bethel and Hillsong, every time your church worship leaders sing those songs, get funding from your church. From their license.
Interesting.
So think about it from that perspective, is your money is going to support these really unsound doctrine churches. And actually, in the last church I went to, I talked to him extensively about, my feelings about singing some of these secular songs with some of these people that are holding hands with Hillsong. I specifically went into some of the songs that we were singing and how they were very closely tied to Hillsong and Bethel, not necessarily, part of their teams, but were willing to hold hands with them and participate with them. I said, I can in good conscience continue to be on this team if you're going to cover artists that are willing to promote Bethel and Hillsong with their music.
Interesting. I didn't know that about, you shared that and I'm like, wow. Yeah, that's interesting.
So it's not a surprise to me because worship leaders at the end of the day, they're just trying to get up there. They're trying to make sure that they can lead people in worship, that they can, really present a time that will bring the congregation together in worship of the Lord, which all of that is admirable.
Yes.
But they don't want to take that second, deeper glance at what like a CCM license means and what that potentially does. And how many worship leaders really know that what Hillsong and Bethel teach?
Yeah, I don't think they know. I don't think a lot of people do this research at all.
I don't think so either.
And that's why I'm doing the show.
Another reason why we're doing our show is to warn people about the potential plans of the future of I would have to say at this point, the WEF is definitely not something that I would call a, let's say a beneficial or benevolent organization. I'd say that it is in fact a very shady and evil organization, especially when they want to have implants go into people. Talk to me a little bit about this story. Okay.
So the headline was the WEF says CBDCs must be quote unquote implanted under your skin if you want to participate in society. And that just reminded me of, Revelation 13, 17, talking about, the mark and all that. So the WEF has declared that all citizens must be implanted with a CBDC microchip in the very near future in order to be able to fully participate in society to do basic things such as purchase food and water. That's crazy. I mean, just like I said, man, Revelation 13, 17. But according to Professor Richard Werner, he's kind of the guy that they were interviewing, in the very near future, citizens will need to use the latest technology, that's quote unquote, such as quote unquote Cbdc chip implant in order to access their bank accounts. So you have to think of CBDCs, this is his quote, you have to think of CBDCs as a control system or a permit system, not a currency. But here's a long quote from him. It's a conditional currency based on the actual getting their permit, that permit. Now, if you happen to be some kind of critic of the government policy or critic of the central banks, this could be difficult, or if you dare to step out of the 15-minute city zone, maybe you'll find out. My Cbdc isn't working. Of course, these are things that we've already seen in China. We've already seen that. There are plenty of videos where somebody tries to use or buy a ticket and doesn't work because his social credit score is too low. So COVID was just a mechanism, right? And it's just the beginning, right? So they're using crisis, disruption, unemployment to introduce universal basic income to soften the public up to accepting a CBDC chip eventually implanted under the skin. So basically, there's a quote again. So basically, they'll say you will get $2,250 into your account every month. But of course, to run this efficiently, we need to use the latest technology. So you need a CBDC chip implant. So this is all being said. It's all being orchestrated. It's all being, who knows? It could come up and then be quelled, come up and be quelled. And then it's God's timing when he lets it release.
And then you have media shills like Howard Stern saying during the pandemic that he doesn't care about the freedoms or the well-being of these people. He wants to be able to go outside and go visit people. So they need to get on board. And that's just going to be echoed.
Yes.
About people who refuse to take the chip for CBDC.
Yes. Yep. It's going to be the same. It's the same. So it's an echo. It's a type.
Yeah.
So yeah, definitely.
So our next story deals with the war effort in Ukraine, and
I got to give an update on that. This is funny.
It's the war effort is in shambles, and we're seeing almost like something. It's something that's very interesting because it's like somebody losing that spotlight who's desperate for it again, but everybody has already moved on to the next thing.
Yes. And do you have that picture? You have that picture?
I sure do. We'll share that picture right
show
now.
That picture, man.
It looks like that classic song, "It's My Party and I'll Cry If I Want To."
If I want to, yeah. I mean, it's the craziest. I saw a whole bunch of memes. I mean, this is a meme picture, man. A meme, M-E-M-E, meme picture, not meme picture. But look at everybody, he's just by himself. He's not wearing a suit. But it's crazy. He threw a tantrum. But the war effort, they say it's in shambles. The hawks turn on each other at the NATO summit. This is at the NATO summit. But Bloomberg is so this is that. I think this is kind of the first time the regular media agrees with the way the anti-war
population feel.
Yeah. So, but Bloomberg just out with devastating behind-the-scenes account of hot-headed Zelensky at the NATO summit it was in Vilnius, and the growing Western backlash in the face of his obvious frustration at what's being seen as he's just unforgiving as ingratitude for the steady flow of billions of dollars in arms to Ukraine. But apparently even the mainstream media agrees with our own assessment of the Ukrainian leader having thrown a tantrum, quote unquote, as he complained about the quote unquote weak and quote unquote absurd NATO stance on Ukrainians' membership. So he started blistering tweets out in English while he's en route to Lithuania, exposing cracks in the alliance. But Bloomberg highlights in the opening of its very revealing piece. I mean, it's crazy, this article, but I did a quote from Bloomberg. Vladimir Zelensky was running hot ahead of his sit down with NATO leaders on Tuesday, July 11th evening. The Ukrainian president had been angered earlier in the day by what he said was an absurd, quote unquote, reluctance to give his country a clear timeline on membership. That outburst in turn riled the partners who have funneled billions of dollars of weaponry and aid into Ukraine defense against the Russian invasion. The U.S. had been given no warning before Zelensky unleashed his attack on social media. So, and then that photo, man, it's a real, that's going to be a photo of him isolated and defeated. and with all the other leaders, their backs turned. It circulated everywhere in social media. But things were even more intense behind the scenes. Again, from Bloomberg, over dinner in Vilnius with U.S. President Joe Biden back at his hotel, the other leaders delivered a clear message to Zelensky. According to one person who was present, you have to cool down and look at the full package. So while it isn't a full hero to zero story yet, it's sliding in that direction. It's crazy. I mean, it's unprecedented that the Ukrainian president, who's previously enjoyed rock star status in the Western capital since the start of the invasion, could be told basically to cool it, quote unquote. But here's one of the quotes from UK Defense Secretary, who's not a friend of he's not an anti-war guy, but he just, UK Defense Secretary Ben Wallace said, whether we like it or not, people want to see gratitude. You're persuading countries to give up their stock of weapons and ammunition. But I guess he cooled off. I say the little actor cooled off because the next day, Wednesday the 12th, Zelensky struck a more conciliatory tone. And Wednesday he took a calm approach, thanking NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg for the attention he has provided to Ukraine. So it's crazy, backed off, right? So, but it's just the inconsistency of it. I think it's he's definitely a cocaine guy. So I call him cocaine. Yeah. I know.
He definitely has the look.
Definitely has the look.
And it just goes to show you that it's going so badly for him because Russia wasn't the paper tiger that the U.S. is when it comes to military. And I think he's also learning the lesson that maybe the North Vietnamese have learned maybe 40 years ago. We're not a very good ally long term.
No.
We tend to be in for about 4 or 5 years. And that, by the way, that's getting shorter and shorter.
It's getting shorter and shorter, and you can see it as time goes on. But yeah, there's so much more to the article. I tried to get the main aspects of the article, but it talked about, Biden talking about our ammo shortage and basically admitting that, and it's a whole bunch of things that I don't want to get into, but it's just, it's crazy how we're just giving, and then we give them another, $1 billion or $500 million the other day. It's like crazy how much money. It's nuts.
Talking about the ruination of things.
Yes. I couldn't wait for this one.
Neither could I, because this is such a wonderful story. It's one of those stories that just gives you the warmth that only a good story could. We have Bud Light. Unfortunately, many people, it seems, in the future might be unemployed. And I really mean that. When it comes to the people who are working, that are in the factories, I pray for them. I pray for them. I do too. Find new employment.
Yes.
Everybody that's a manager and above, and especially the people sitting in that boardroom, I wish you never find another job.
Yes. I mean, it's crazy. So a little update on our favorite beer, Bud Light, right? Now I don't drink beer, so I'm just giving an update. But Bud Light plummets to 14th place among beers from number one. They were number one to 14th place as Anheuser-Busch CEO pleads for consumers to think of the 65,000 employees impacted by the boycotts. So, I mean, from first place to 14th place, right?
Hey, it's very simple. If you really care about your employees, step down.
But the whole thing is,
be the sacrificial lamb.
Yeah, no, they let go. The girl who, I forget her name. I should have written it down, but they let go 2 people that were in charge of kind of the advertising and stuff. And this is the CEO, but he wasn't in charge of advertising. But they let go that girl and I think her assistant. But a recent YouGov survey reveals the decline in Bud Light's ranking. The seismic shift in popularity jeopardizes the livelihoods of 65,000 people whose economic well-being is intrinsically tied to Anheuser-Busch's success. And here's the Anheuser-Busch CEO, Brendan Whitworth, called on people not to punish the workforce, but to rather blame him. But at the same time, Whitworth confirmed that the company will maintain its partnerships without making any changes. So he didn't apologize for his collaboration with Dylan Mulvaney. So the company's actions, the actions have been perceived by a breach of the unspoken bar rules, is what they said. And that was quote unquote bar rules. But as long as the company fails to acknowledge or address the concerns, the boycott will persist. I mean, talk about that Costco thing, man.
Let's go into that a little bit. So recently, it's very interesting news, but for those people who go to Costco, maybe you know this as well, but Costco is a very particular way to show that some things don't sell. And anyway, if you notice this picture we got here, we have Anheuser-Busch Bud Light beer, 36 12-ounce cans. They're on sale for $24.99. But here in the top right-hand corner, we have what is known as the Star of Death. It means that once the stock of this particular product is done, they will not be buying additional stock of this item. So this could be devastating for Anheuser-Busch
I'll have to find
Costco.
Out. Yeah. I'll have to find out if all of Costco's are doing that. I'll go to my Costco out here and see. It's crazy though. That's nuts. That was a find, dude. That was a find. That's. But you hear about how well, you look at they were number 1 and now they're number 14. But you look at like even bars and stuff. I was just kind of posting around and just kind of looking at different stories, and I saw a couple stories on how the bar they can't force people to drink Bud Light. They can't. I mean, people have switched. Which it's funny that Anheuser-Busch owns Modelo, became the number 1 beer, number 1 domestic beer. Yeah, Modelo, and Anheuser-Busch owns a Modelo too. So it's so. But yeah, Miller Lite did something. I forget. Miller Lite was number 2, and then they posted something with the transgender, with the Pride Month or whatever.
Yeah, I think they did something with the radical feminism, actually.
Yeah, and yes, they did. And then they went down to number 5 or 7 or whatever, and then number 2 became Modelo, and Modelo is owned by which you got to do. You just got to do your diligence and research. But
well, this is an opportunity for a beer company out there. Make sure that you make your beer, and it's called Unpolitical Beer.
Unpolitical Beer.
Number 1, instantly.
Number 1. Yep.
The next story we got is the bill. The California Assembly's bill blocked another bill that made human trafficking a felony. So now in California, what was once a felony is no longer a felony in California.
Yes.
The traffic of human children.
Yep. California Assembly Committee blocks bill that could have sent human traffickers of kids to prison for life. Senate Bill 14 makes human trafficking of children a serious felony, right up there with the murder and rape. And the California Assembly Public Safety Committee nuked the measure. Horrible. Someone yelled as and victims sobbed, and you should be ashamed of yourselves. They were yelling like the people that attended the meeting. But apparently no Democrats voted on the committee, that voted for the bill. So, and then Jessica Millen Patterson, Republican chairperson, said, you're on the wrong side of issues when you deliver a win for human traffickers. What we saw today from California Democrats was heartless and disgusting. And then James Gallagher, California Assembly Republican leader, said, once again, Democrats are looking out for the most vicious criminals at the expense of victims. Any normal person would tell you that human trafficking a minor is a serious crime, but Democrats would rather enable these monsters than hold them accountable. So, meanwhile, in Florida, Attorney General Ashley Moody is demanding Mark Zuckerberg explain the high volume of human trafficking across the Meta platform, right? So that you're seeing pedophiles are using Metaverse to sexually exploit children. But the committee also rejected other measures that would increase penalties for domestic violence offenders, rapist of developmentally disabled children and other sexually violent crimes. So it was a large
class that we were supposed to protect in California.
Yeah,
the assembly
definitely
is going to make sure that it's all right.
Yeah,
to destroy their lives.
Yep. And then back to Facebook, they report, the top platform used by recruitment of human trafficking is Facebook. From 2019, 2022, they did the research. And 2022 federal human trafficking report found that 53% of traffickers use the internet to solicit buyers of commercial sex. So California consistently ranked number one, that could be the reason, in the nation for human trafficking cases reported to the human trafficking hotline. And human trafficking is among the fastest growing criminal enterprise. It's estimated to be $150 billion a year global industry. So, but I got some verses that go along with what I was talking about. It's Ephesians 4:18 through 19, being darkened in their understanding, excluded from the life of God because of the ignorance that is in them because of the hardness of their heart. Verse 19, and they, having become callous, have given themselves over to sensuality for practice of every kind of impurity and greediness. And Philippians 3:19, whose end is destruction, whose God is their appetite, and whose glory is in their shame, who set their minds on earthly things. People parade what they should be ashamed of. This is judgment, folks. But as Christians, we need to stand for the truth and live God's word and not back down. So I got two more verses. Titus 1:15, to the pure, all things are pure, but to those who are defiled and unbelieving, nothing is pure, but both their minds and their conscience are defiled. And Psalm 5:9 through 10 is an imprecatory. David is talking about his enemies, but it applies to us as well. There's nothing reliable in what they say. Their inward part is destruction itself. Their throat is an open grave. They flatter with their tongue. Hold them guilty, O God, by their own devices. Let them fall in the multitude of their transgressions. Thrust them out, for they are rebellious against you. So, but I'll finish with this. Because there is hope, the ultimate hope. Jesus' death and resurrection was so we can be saved from this darkness which is surrounding us, so we can spend eternity with him rejoicing in his presence. But I'll finish with a good verse. Here's an uplifting verse. John 1:4 through 5. In him was life, and the life was the light of men. The light shines in darkness, and the darkness did not overcome it. So if we're in a dark room and we light a candle, and that flame, it eradicates that darkness. Darkness doesn't stand a chance with light. So we got to be the flames, man. That's it.
I'll just shed light on topics like this.
Yes.
And not only that, we have to be diligent in making sure that justice is done. Yes. Amen. Well, we want to thank you for watching another episode of Ken's Corner. We hope you enjoyed this time, Ken. It's been wonderful to see you again, brother.
Good to see you.
Until next time, take care.